I am not a hugger. Or at least that is my typical response to anyone that ever offers me a hug. However, a couple of weeks ago, I was at school and I was feeling pretty upset. I was crying, and a random teacher that I've never really talked to before offered me a hug. Now, instead of saying my usual, "Oh no thanks, I'm not a hugger," I said yes. And to my surprise, that hug was quite nice. I immediately noticed my heart rate lower. I felt warmer, I felt safer, and I felt a little less alone. I thought about that specific hug for days. I had lots of questions. Should I have said no? Am I suddenly a hugger? Is my relationship with that teacher now going to be incredibly awkward? But I had one big question. Why did I immediately feel better after? And the answer to that question is oxytocin. Oxytocin is a natural hormone, commonly referred to as the love hormone. It is produced in your hypothalamus, which is in the midsection of your brain, but it is stored in your pituitary gland and then transferred into your bloodstream. When you hug someone, you release oxytocin. You also release oxytocin when you breastfeed, when you eat, and when you exercise. There are extensive benefits to the release of oxytocin. According to Maria Peterson, a neuroscientist at NIH, the release of oxytocin lowers levels of stress by reducing blood pressure and cortisol levels. It heightens your pain threshold, boosts your immune system, promotes healing and cell growth, and can better your relationship with others by promoting empathy and trust. In the 1930s, there was a man studying at the University of Wisconsin who performed a study. He wanted to test the relationship between monkeys and their mothers and how important physical contact was. So what he did was he took a group of infant monkeys and put them in separate cages. Fair warning, there are some ethical concerns in regards to this experiment, but that's a conversation for another day. So in those cages, there were two surrogate mothers. One was made of wire and was holding a bottle of milk for nourishment, and the other was made of cloth but had zero nourishment. The monkeys went to the wire monkey very quickly to get some food, but would immediately return to the cloth monkey. Monkeys would also explore the cage, but would yet again return to the cloth monkey, and it is quoted that they clung onto it. Now another group of monkeys were put in cages, with just the wire monkey holding the bottle of milk. Although those monkeys were nourished, they were paralyzed with fear and unable to move. Harlow concluded that in order for a child to develop properly, physical contact was crucial from a parent. This introduced the idea of contact comfort, which is essentially saying the same thing, that in order for a child to develop, it must have physical contact from a parent. Now, there were many studies that kind of explored this idea, but one notable one was one by Tiffany Field, who is a researcher at the University of Miami and is also the CEO of the Touch Research Institute at the University of Miami School of Medicine. Tiffany Field took a group of premature babies and she gave them massages for 10 minutes a day for 10 days. In comparison to premature babies who did not receive the massages, those babies grew 50% larger. So yeah, hugging is great. Let's hug more people, except not in the middle of a pandemic. In 2020, the unthinkable happened. A pandemic hit our world, and so many things were changed, but one of them was that we were unable to touch each other. Now, I would not say that I often long for hugs from people. However, in the midst of 2020, I dreamt of being able to hug my grandparents and my friends. A man named Andy Mahone, studying at Michigan State, did a bit of research and found that those who lived alone during the pandemic and were not constantly in contact with others or had physical contact with others were much more depressed, were more lonely, were getting less sleep, and were stressed overall. That is because they were releasing less oxytocin. So COVID ended, we returned to normal life. However, the new normal was fist bumping people instead of hugging them. Even now, sometimes I'll go in for a hug with someone and they'll say, hey, let's fist bump, I'm worried about COVID. So another researcher, Bobby Wegner, who's a PhD candidate at Harvard University, also did a bit of research. He concluded that haphophobia, which is the fear of being touched, the numbers of people with it vastly increased post-COVID. So people that were never afraid of hugs before are suddenly afraid of being touched. So remember a few minutes ago I said I'm not a hugger. I'm not sure that is the case. I actually love hugs, but I'm still pretty scared of them, and no, I don't have haphophobia. Hugs are awkward. When you go in for a hug, do you go over or do you go under the person's arms? How long do you hug for? When do you know when to let go? Just so much uncertainty that is scary. But what I've realized is if there is consent and both parties are comfortable, then normally the hugs work out. So here are a few photos of me hugging my friends, oxytocin flowing through our veins. I challenge you to hug more people, whether it be a loved one, a friend, a colleague, or someone who is having a rough time. Observe how you feel. See how you feel before the hug and after the hug. And if it makes you happier, do it more. Hug more people. A teacher that I barely knew made me go from hysterically crying to much calmer in a span of 10 seconds. And thanks to oxytocin, you can change someone's life with a hug.